So my new premise for Divinity's Ward and Open Legend is to change a good amount about the actual story and the world. We're actually going to be changing entire time frames, and the adventurers will have a completely new set of tasks and opportunities, all based on what Open Legend can provide in terms of their archetypes and the mechanics. Divinity's Ward is a steampunk world set in the year 2020-37 AB, denoted as After Breath. Asteris, an island continent on the planet of Hypharon, is opening its borders after 200 years of isolation. Asteris has been open only for a few months when our adventurers arrive, a place already said to be a marvel of arcana and technology, known as the New Age. Airships sail the skies, cities stand tall, made of an alkaline, silver-like metal, unfamiliar to new immigrants and travelers, and the ocean is deep, filled with black-blue water few dare to traverse. This boom in technology is credited to a goddess named Lilia. Lilia is the goddess of the moon, the deep, also known as the ocean, and technology. She is fabled to have gifted technology to Asteris, and therefore is the patron goddess of the land. As such, artifacts, relics, and ruins of the goddess are protected by golden armored soldiers called the wards. These wards are divine soldiers under the command of the zealot organization, the Divinity Ward, who govern Asteris and are responsible for opening the passage of travel and immigration. Each of our adventurers are skilled workmen who find themselves arriving at Asteris in response to an ad. At their brand new outpost, the merchandise and trading company, Grendel and Suede Exports, are looking for a crew. Asteris is still an island continent on the planet of Hypharon, and it is still opening its borders after 200 years of isolation. However, originally they had opened their borders and everyone was going to be arriving, and the players were going to be arriving day one. Like in the first couple of days that they had opened their doors, and it was going to be more of a moment of excitement and intrigue. In this new version of my world, Asteris has already been open for quite some time. I'm going to say at least a few months, maybe an annual cycle. So people have arrived in droves and they're already pretty populated. Things move very quickly when you have so many people. And in this version, the people on Asteris have prepared for this arrival. In the original version, which was going to be set in medieval time, this was a surprise. People didn't really know that they were going to get this huge influx of visitors and expats. In this case, everyone on this planet knew for 3 years. So they really worked up to making Asteris hospitable for the large amount of people that were going to be coming. So when people arrive to Asteris, this place is already known for, strange technology. But now that it's open and more people can come, it's now known as the New Age of technology. It's a marvel of arcana and technology spliced together. The way that I am setting up this new idea of this world is not completely separate from my medieval version. It is simply far, far in the future, because the only reason that it matters that they open their borders is for our players to explore the world. The same stories that I had built for all of the places, all of the locations, and the different families, those all still exist. It's just now I have what happened to them, thousands of years later, which is going to be very, very interesting because my players also know that history. And this is what I've let them know, is that this is simply going to be in the future. And so all of the history that they kind of built in, the characters they created, and the relationships they had, they really learned that before we had to change to open legend. And I didn't want to lose that. So that's all still very relevant. It's just now we're in the future. So the goddesses, that's another thing that is slightly changed, because now the goddesses, have evolved over time, and their belief and people's belief in the goddesses have changed over time, as well as which goddesses are more prevalent than others. Because if you remember from how the goddesses were worshipped in the medieval era, it was all based on, previous knowledge and previous histories, and mythologies based on each continent's understanding of why they were blessed by one of the goddesses. A really big change is that in the medieval era, the Dragon's Breath continent, their military was the largest military in the world, and they were undefeated. Well, I'm not going to get into it, but it's been a couple of thousand years, and now Clarinston, who had always been trying to fight Dragon's Breath for control of having a bigger and more pronounced, military power, is now the most powerful military power. They were, remember, following Halil, while Dragon's Breath was following Hypharon. So we're really going to see a difference in, we have Lilia, who was once a banished goddess in the medieval era, being the goddess of a new age of technology. We have Halil, who was the patron goddess of this continent that everyone hated, because the continent hated everybody else, and did some really horrible things. We see them coming into a lot of power and a lot of prowess, and so people might not still like them, but in conjunction to the level of power that different continents have now, mean that the power of their goddesses also increase. So we're going to see a different dynamic in terms of how people relate to one another and how the goddesses interact with our players and the rest of the world. And there are a couple of things that I have introduced so that I can help my players really get into the story and the world a little bit better, and to also help me figure out how I want to track some of the things that I think are important. So we'll get to that once we get to the character sheet that I am creating. So in this new world, Lilia is the goddess of the moon and the deep, and she's also the goddess of technology. In the medieval world, she was the goddess of the moon, and people believed, I think, she was kind of on the cusp of being the goddess of the deep or the oceans. And now she just is. And then, of course, she is also the goddess of technology. One of the big things that has changed, though, is the way that our players are going to be immigrating to Asteris. So originally, like I said, they were just kind of here for many different reasons, and they didn't know each other. We were going to go with a band of adventurers that had met each other on Asteris. In this story, each of our adventurers are skilled workmen in some way, who find themselves arriving in Asteris in response to an ad. Are they going to be a crew of an airship or a regular ship? I think a regular ship would be really fun, because it's really dangerous to sail the seas, and it takes a long time. But I don't know if I want this to be a swashbuckler pirate adventure. That would be fun, but I don't know if I want the entire campaign to be that. In terms of airships, though, airships will be able to leave the continent, so that might be a little bit better, because they can have, more space to go places. Or they could just be a crew that just has a mounted vehicle at first, and we can look at maybe increasing that each campaign. So maybe they can start with just having a carriage, or some sort of weird or cool steampunk invention that can travel distances, and they just do work on Asteris at first, and then maybe they can upgrade. So we will see about what I want to do with that in the future. But in general, this is the new Divinities board. There are a few things I will be keeping, changing, and completely throwing out, but really changing because I'm still keeping it. But in terms of what is in the core rulebook of Open Legend, one of the things I really like about Open Legend is that it really is very customizable, And it really encourages you to be like, well, here are the rules and here's what you can do, but you can also just not do this. You know, you can do a little bit of that, or you can do whatever you want. It's your game. It's you guys' game. Just, you know, have fun. Focus on what will make your story best playable. I already do that with all of my games. However, I really like a system that kind of gives you permission to do that, so that hopefully everyone who's playing also feels that same way, because you might not get that with some systems. So I took that to heart because I already do that. So I went full force. I also really like all of the new stuff that I get to play with. And I also like the kind of hodgepodge of really how they combined a lot of things from some other very well-known systems, but then changed them to make them work specifically for Open Legend. So Open Legend is a very different type of game. It's a very different system. I didn't know if it was going to be very much like 5e or very much like, you know, some other system, but it's not. It is quite unique, which I really, really enjoyed. But that does mean that there's a bit of a learning curve when you are just picking up something, particularly if you're trying to change something from one system to the next. And so one of the challenges I had was figuring out if I wanted to completely rewrite Divinity's Ward, like just throw away most of what I had did for 5e and just make it completely an Open Legend. And that is what I did, mainly because I actually knew that that was going to be easier than trying to keep absolutely everything and then just fit it in using Open Legend. I really, as I was like reading it and reviewing everything, I really felt that honestly I could actually still take this idea and honestly kind of make it better. I really evolved Divinity's Ward, which is why I am keeping the medieval history, but I am now adding what happens in the future. So for this new Open Legend game, there are a couple of things that I'm keeping from the system, a few things that I am going to be changing, and then a couple of things I'm going to be throwing out. With the changing, these might be complete like redos, like reskinning items and creating a new character sheet, as well as completely pretty much like hodgepodging like animal companions to make them almost like a half companion, half familiar type of situation. So more custom companions in that way. But I also will be doing some additions. So the couple of things that I'm keeping are pretty much everything. I really like the archetypes. I like the banes and boons, the scoring system, and the XP. So pretty much everything I'm keeping. The only thing I'm really 100% throwing out is the entire wealth system. So originally I was going to be limiting the archetypes, but I'm not going to do that anymore. So I'm actually going to be adding some stuff. Some of the things I'm going to be adding are a body type that kind of like coincide with body size. I kind of like that they don't give you any like races or anything like that. So you can kind of just choose your own and it can be anything. I really enjoy that. But it's a little difficult to make sure that if you're trying to not utilize, you know, species and races from certain games, if you're trying not to do that, then it's a little difficult to, you know, have your players make those decisions. So instead I was like, well, let's try and do, you know, something very basic and then connect it to their body size. So that's why I developed a body type, and then that coincides with body size. So there are 3 major additions that I'm adding to this Divinity Sword. One of them, of course, is the body type. So we have halfling, humanoid beast, humanoid mechanical, and a giant. And those coincide with a body size, either small, medium, large, or extra large. The humanoid beast is exactly what it sounds like. It's a humanoid, but they might have a beast transformation. Same thing with mechanical. It's a humanoid, but they might have a transformation, but it's a mechanical. So it's really are you a biological entity that turns into an animal or something like that? Or are you a mechanical or cyborg or android type of being and you can also transform? We're adding roles. In this game, they are part of a crew. And so I need them all to have some sort of specific skill. So the roles are going to kind of act as like base occupations, but they are going to be able to choose, what their actual occupation is, as long as it's within whatever role they choose. One of the things I really like about the roles is that there can be only one. So each role has a level of experience in technology, as well as their own pay scale. This is really just a base for everyone, but then what they kind of come up with in terms of what their perks and their flaws are when they go through their character sheet, we'll discuss how those will interact with the roles, their technology level, and of course the debt to income system that we're going to be working on. And then one of the last things that I'm truly adding is a reputation. So this is specifically reputation in terms of their favorability with the goddess Lilia. They can go all the way from banishment, which is really 0 to in the negatives, to ward status. Being a ward, you are known to be, the divine soldier of Asteris and Lilia. So that is like your top creme de la creme. And so reputation is going to be important in terms of how our crew is perceived by the rest of the world when they go out on missions. And then finally, so I said that I am changing the wealth system. So for our players, if the healer makes 2,800 credits a year and they only spend, 560, then they're living basic. They are able to spend the amount of money necessary to pay for their living expenses, and then they should have money left over from their income to do other things, like put towards savings or blow it all trying to get 21 at the blackjack table. Their wealth will accumulate throughout the year, but they will need to be paying bills. Dimension 20's Starstruck campaign, they did that really well using credit system and using like a debt to income ratio. That was really fun to watch. And I think for them, I think for this game, since they are a crew and since I really want their roles and their jobs and their money coming in to be important, I think a debt to income ratio works way better than a wealth score. I think haggling and a bartering system economy makes sense. That doesn't always make sense for other campaigns, and I wouldn't have done it for 5e. They were going to be working on, gold and platinum and whatnot. But for here, I think this makes sense because they are already on the credit system, and Asteris and High Pharaoh are going through a technological revolution right now. And there's definitely going to be people who have old money. Therefore, bartering just makes more sense for where they are right now. In a couple of thousand years, who knows what the prices will be for things. But for now, bartering makes sense as they kind of switch and shift their economic system. All right, so I promised to show you guys the character sheet when it was done. And it took me, I want to say on and off because, I didn't work on it all day. But I want to say on and off, it took me probably 3 days to organize this. So if you guys haven't seen the original character sheets, they are fine. I didn't mind them, but I really wanted a character sheet that would be a little bit easier for me to make sure that everyone had all of the aspects that I had added to the game on the character sheet. I really also kind of wanted to get some formulas in here for like scoring, just so that it wasn't that difficult. And I personally wanted some links like in a mapping content page. So the character sheet is pretty simple. If you have it up, like fully up, like I have it right now, you're seeing the full sheet and you're just going to scroll down to see absolutely everything you would need to use. So you shouldn't have to take, move to the left or move to the right for anything that's really important. I will say though, that if you move to the right, you will get some keys just for reference that are on the page that are just helpful. And then also down at the bottom, you get the purchasing attributes key. These are just good references until the players get used to playing Open Legend. So first things first, this top box is Essentially everything I really wanted to make sure that they had available to them for like battles, really. So like hit points and speed and XP and their level. They can choose their archetype with a drop down. These are all of the archetypes that are in the book. And then they can also choose their role after we have discussed which one they want to do, and I make sure that no one's doubling up. And once they're done that section, they can really just go down and put in their attributes. This entire cost column is also a formula, so it'll sum down here for them so they don't have to try to count as they go down. Next is the wealth, body type, body size, reputation, and tech level. These are things that they're going to have to be looking at pretty much every time they play the game, particularly with reputation and wealth. But the tech level, the body type, and the body size should pretty much stay the same, unless they are making some major changes to their character. The wealth is something that they can just input. The debt is also something they can input, and I want them to input it separately. So I want them to look at what their wealth looks like, what their debt looks like, and then there'll be an account balance over here that is a formula. I have legend points here that they can update as well. And then below are all of the defense points, which are all formulas. They can choose their perks, which again are just drop downs, and their flaws, which are drop downs. And then in the weapons section, they can also choose their weapons, which ones they want to have in terms of the type and the category, and then they can input the properties in the banes. And then I have properties and effects over to the side here that they can choose from, and then they'll add if the weapon has any bonuses or penalties. Same thing with the armor. We have the different types of armor and then the category of armor, and then they can put the properties in banes. And same thing with the shield. Either a small shield or a heavy shield, or they could also have a custom shield and they can put that in properties. Then we have the items and equipment. Mostly we're using I'm going to assume you have it type of gameplay system, where if they need a box of matches or they need a torch, I'm going to assume they have it. They don't need to have that on the equipment. What I really want on the items and the equipment is the stuff that's important to them, that if they lose, I can intertwine that into the gameplay. So one of the big things that everyone will have is a holy symbol. A holy symbol is one of those things that is embedded in the culture of this planet. Everyone has a holy symbol of one of the three goddesses. So every one of my players will have a holy symbol of one of the three goddesses. And then we have the attacks, the actions, and the spells. And then they can just choose, their banes, again, drop downs, the boons, drop downs, and their feats, which are drop downs. So this is for if they are creating their character from scratch. It's just going to be empty, but they can also just find one of the already made archetype builds and just input that, and then try to change that a little bit as we talk about their characters a little bit more. They can do either. I'll also be using this to make my NPC characters as well as the bosses. That is it. That's the character sheet. That is it for all of the changes I'm making, all of the additions I'm making, and then what this world is all about. I am super excited to start. I've already started working with my players and figuring out all of the changes that need to be made to their previous characters. And they might need to be, completely rewritten and completely redone. And we've already talked about that possibility. So stay tuned to know more about this new Divinity's Award in Open Legend. As always, I'll see you guys next time.